welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my January 2023 favorites and reflections. I feel like I'm so behind on this video. Like, I don't know why, but January felt so long to me, and then February has just like flown by so far. I think it's the 8th today, and I don't know where the hell the time went because it was like the 1st the other day, it felt like. So I have a lot to talk about this video, so sit down, grab a snack. It's gonna be long because it was, the beginning of the year, and I was trying to get stuff organized and figure out what I wanted to do with my practice and all of that. So there's a lot to talk about. So I like to start off with these videos by talking about my tarot and oracle card for the month, and then I talk about what my upcoming tarot and oracle card are. So for January, my tarot card was the 10 of Pentacles and my oracle card was Surrender. So with the 10 of Pentacles, I discovered ancestor work, and I didn't discover it, but I started to implement it in my practice and work with it. Kind of in the last half of 2022, I really felt like I wanted to work with ancestors, and I was feeling really drawn to do that. And so with the new year, that has become part of my practice and something that I really have been loving. And it just, I don't know, it adds this whole other element and a whole other layer to my spiritual practice. Working with ancestral energy has been really beautiful. And also this month, I've been thinking a lot about my legacy and what I want for the future and certain beliefs and things that I want to implement into my life going forward, with future generations in the family, if I have children, that kind of a thing. So I feel like this month was really about solidifying what I believe in and just kind of sorting through that and thinking about what's important to me and, my core values. So surrender, this definitely played a part in my month. I feel like January was just kind of craziness. I had to surrender. I had to just let go of a lot of things. There was a lot of like me wanting to control or feeling like I needed to control certain situations, and that just wasn't working out. For example, one thing that I really like, a big thing that kind of stood out to me is we had this huge rock slide on the road going to my job or to town. Like, I live, for context, an hour and 15 minutes during the day or an hour and 30 minutes during the night away from town, as we call it, like a Walmart, any kind of big store like that. I live an hour and a half practically away from, and that is where I go to work, and I only work 2 to 3 days a week because of that. And there was a huge rock slide on the road to my job, and I wasn't aware of that when I had left for work. So I had to kind of take this other detour, and it took about 30 extra minutes to get to work. That was okay. And then during the day, I found that they had closed that detour, and so the only other way home was like a 2.5-hour drive. I had to go like up this other mountain and then across, and it was this whole thing. And I just had to surrender and be like, okay, well, this is what's happening. And, I just have to go with it, go with the flow. So that's a big thing that kind of stood out to me. My period came like a week early, so I kind of just had to accept that. There was a lot. And I'm going to go through my journal here in a minute, or my planner, so we can kind of look at some other things that happened and maybe that I had to surrender to this month. But yeah, so I definitely think that these cards really played a part in my month overall. Okay, so for February, my cards are the Chariot and Healing. So initially when I saw that the Chariot was my card for this month, I thought progress, like that's the word that kind of popped into my head. So I feel like I'm going to make a lot of progress in some aspect of my life, whether it's, my spirituality or my confidence or something like that. Because those are things that I've been working on a lot. So some kind of progress is going to be made this month. And I also thought the Chariot, travel. This month is Valentine's Day as well as my wedding anniversary. So I think there's going to be a lot of driving or, going out, celebrating, things like that. And healing. I mean, healing has been a main priority of mine over the past year or so. Like 2022 was really about healing a lot of wounds for me. So I think, that's just carrying on until, healing is a never ending journey, but I feel like 2023 and, this February, I might just be healing some more, trauma or wounds I have, resting and things like that. But also actively healing. Like, you don't have to just sit and relax and do nothing and work on self-care to heal. There's a lot of other things. And I think like going out and being in nature and living is going to be very healing for me this month. So that is kind of like my thoughts on what this is talking about. So those are my cards. So now we're going to talk about like memories and stuff. So if you guys don't know, this is my planner. I talked about, what I was doing with my planner and my journaling in a video towards the beginning of the new year. And what I do in here is I write down basically what I did every day. So we're going to go through here and see, main things or memories, I guess, that jumped out to me. Again, January felt like a very, very long month to me. So I can't remember, like it feels like so long ago. And a lot happened and I worked with a lot of decks. So we'll talk about that too. So let's see. So I really started writing letters this month because I wanted to live a more analog life, as I was talking to you guys about. So I wrote like letters to my family. Let's see. There was a lot of like snow days or days where it snowed in, and so that was fun. I've been in the middle of like painting or like redoing our kitchen. So we did backsplash and I've been painting that kind of slowly. Like, I don't know, I just haven't wanted to do it all at once. So that's pretty much done. We still have like trim and stuff to do in there. I also got a lot of like reading orders this month. So I filmed a lot of tarot readings for other people, which was really nice. So another part of the kitchen that I've been doing is our fridge. So I completely like covered our fridge with peel and stick wallpaper, which is something I saw on like Pinterest and things like that, and I'm obsessed. I like painted behind the fridge so that it all matched. I painted this old mirror I had and put like little decor up there, and I'm really happy with how it looks. A show we watched in January was The White Lotus, and I really, really enjoyed it. We watched season 1 and 2, so let me know if you guys have seen The White Lotus. I think it's really cool. It's kind of like mystery but funny, and I don't know, it's a really good show. Yeah, so this is when the rock slide happened, so on the 28th, so like kind of towards the end of the month. But I've also had a lot of crazy dreams this month. Like I had so many crazy dreams, and I started to write in my dream journal again, which has been really healing, and it helps me analyze. Like my dream journal has kind of questions and prompts that help me to analyze my dream and see like what it means. So that's kind of, the main things that went on in January. So I had a lot going on. Again, it felt like a really freaking long ass month. Okay, so for books, I read so much in January, and I am like on a binge of a series and I'm obsessed. So I read 7 books in January, which I'm really happy with that number. So let's talk about this book first. So I've been reading Palm Reading for Beginners. This is by, let me see. Okay, so this is Palm Reading for Beginners, A Guide to Discovering Your Strengths and Decoding Your Life Path by Kenneth Lagerstrom. I think that's how you say it. I'm about 30% done with this book, so not finished, but I feel like it'll take me a while to get through with it. So, so far I really like it. And I've talked to you guys about how I've wanted to learn palmistry for so long, but I don't have it on like my to-do list, because I find that when I kind of set goals on what I want to learn, it never really works out. Or if I force myself to kind of study something when I'm not feeling it, it doesn't work out for me. but I got a really huge kind of urge to learn palmistry this month. So I've been studying slowly but surely, and I've already learned like more than I've ever learned in palmistry just by reading this book a little bit. But I feel like this is going to be like a slow and steady kind of a read when I feel like doing stuff like that. So I really enjoy it so far. So that's the only kind of like nonfiction book that I've read this month. The next series I read, and so most of the series I've been reading are on Kindle Unlimited because I have Kindle Unlimited and I try to look for books that are free on there. And I flew through this series. So this is The Vicious Lost Boys by Nikki St. Crow, and these books are so good. They're basically a retelling of Peter Pan, kind of. This series is very adult. It has a lot of sexual content in it, which is not necessarily like what I look for in my fantasy books. I do like a good smutty book, but I do like storyline, and this did have enough storyline where I was intrigued by it. But it's very like sexual, very I don't know, there are some like trigger warnings and stuff but I really enjoyed this. I flew through these were like shorter books, so I mean I read them all very quickly, and I think there's gonna be a 4th book in this series if I'm not mistaken, so it's not finished, but this was a really, really good. So it's The Never King, The Dark One, and Their Vicious Darling. So really good. I like how they kind of changed the story of Peter Pan and made it different. So yeah, I don't know. I was like living the whole fantasy of like pirates and, you know, the Lost Boys. I don't know. It was so good. But again, very like sexual content, and that's not normally what I like. I like a lot more storyline than just like that aspect of it. So then I started reading Zodiac Academy. So I read 4 out of the, what is it? There's 9 books in the series, and I'm on book 6. But in January, I read the first 4 books, and these books are longer. And when I first got my Kindle and I was looking at Kindle Unlimited, this series was like recommended as one of the best Kindle Unlimited series. And I was like, you know, like it didn't really intrigue me at the time, like a little bit, but I was like, oh, I'll read it later. And I was looking for a new series to read, and this one, I was like, let me just give it a try because I've heard a lot of good things about it. But I'm not super into like school type books, you know, like I'm not in school. I don't really want to go back to school, you know, that's not my life. And so, you know, academic type books where they're set in like an academic setting, you know, is just not normally my cup of tea. And so I kind of was like hesitant about that. But I started reading it, and the first book, it hooked me enough, but it wasn't my favorite. There was a lot of like bullying and stuff. Basically, the layout or like the premise of the story is about these 2 twins, and they find out they're like these lost princesses of another realm. And they get brought to this other place, and they attend Zodiac Academy. And I really like the astrological kind of themes in this book. Like they do rely a lot on like star signs, and like the stars are like their gods, and you know, they get horoscopes every day that kind of talk about like what their day is going to be like. It's kind of like set in modern times, even though it's fantasy. So, you know, they still have like cell phones. They call them something else, but they have cell phones. They have like technology. It's really interesting. And again, the first book was kind of not my favorite, but I got so hooked on this, and this is like exactly what I was wanting, because after I read the Vicious Lost Boys series, I was like, I want something that has like slow burn, enemies to lovers. Like that is my favorite kind of like fantasy romance. So if you guys have any suggestions on stuff that's like enemies to lovers, really like slow burn, like pining, like all of that kind of stuff, that is what I love. And this book this series is very much that. There are these twin sisters, and they both have multiple kind of love interests throughout the series, but there are like these specific people that they're drawn to more than anybody else, and it's just so good. The romance in this, and like the pain. I think the end of the 3rd or fourth book, really just like tore my heart out. Like it was, it's like it hurts so bad, but it feels so good at the same time, because you're like, this is just so good. This is exactly what I want. I want to be like destroyed by this series. So it's really good. Let me see what the names are, because it's not telling me. So I think the first one's called The Awakening. And so this one was, you know, again, my least favorite. And then from there, I've just been obsessed. Ruthless Fae. So I really enjoyed that one. The Reckoning is number 3. And Shadow Princess is number 4. So I think 3 and 4 were probably my favorites out of the 4 that I read in January. And I've really been enjoying the other ones that I've read since then, but we'll talk about that next month. So I'm really excited with what I read. So I had a goal to read 40 books in February, so 7 in the first month is really a good start. So if you guys have anything that reminds you of this series, or you've read this, please let me know. But yeah, that's kind of like my favorite kind of genre, or like what I like is like fantasy. This one being in the modern times doesn't really bother me that much, but I do like it fantasy if it's going to be in the modern times, like in a different realm or something like that. I also do love like the enemies to lovers. I mean, I do like sexual content in the book, as long as it's like not the whole book, you know what I mean? Like I do like the build up and all of that. So really, really loved those books. And that's been like the most of what I've been doing this month, is just reading Zodiac Academy. And yeah, like I can't get myself away from them. Okay, so let's talk about decks now, and there's a shit ton, so just a little heads up. I got a lot of decks for Christmas that I wanted to work with and play around with, and then I also, I've been, you know, like I told you guys that I've been into ancestor work, so I had decks that I already had in my collection that kind of filled that spot, and then I've been working through some very specific things this month. So again, I kind of went to my collection and looked for things that would fill that need. I also bought 2 decks this month, so I'll talk about those. And yeah, just favorites. I feel like my collection's been getting a lot of use this month, so that's why there's like so many decks that I have for this favorite video. I've really enjoyed when I feel like I need a new deck, or I want to work with like a specific energy, going to my collection and finding that I already have something that fits that. So yeah, I think that's kind of what the theme is going to be from here on out for a while, is just finding decks in my collection that fit like what the energy is for me right now, what I'm working with, and not feeling like I have to buy something. But it is, I don't know, I've been very much like working with certain energies and decks for specific purposes, if that makes sense. So let's talk about the 2 decks that I purchased, and I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean. So the first deck that I purchased in January was the Zodiac Tarot. Now, I purchased this one because I had my eye on it from the minute that I saw that it was coming out. This is by US Games. It comes in this other box. This is the tuck box inside the box. I don't know why they do that. Like, just give me the tuck box. These are the backs. This deck is very like shiny, and it's bigger than a standard tarot size. So I guess that's not a very good, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's much bigger than a standard tarot card. And I kind of knew it was going to be a problem when I first saw like walkthroughs on the deck, but the artwork just spoke to me so much, and I have bonded with this deck, but the like tactile experience with that I have with it is not my favorite. But I do love that it has the astrological and planetary symbols on it, and it's been helping me learn a lot. But this artwork is just so me. My aesthetic is very like celestial and magical, and like I love it. I love all the outfits that they have, like all the eyeballs, and I love that it has a black background. So I love it, all the stars and stuff. So I love the artwork. The cardstock is not my favorite. Like, it's very thick. You can riffle shuffle it, but it's bigger and it's kind of difficult to do so. And again, it's very shiny, so I don't know. It's just, the tactile thing is just something I have to work past, but I did work with this quite a bit. I used it in client readings. There's a lot you can get out of this artwork. It's pretty much RWS, but there are some, you know, variations here. But I just freaking love these outfits. Look at the sun and the moon coming together in the Two of Cups. Like, I freaking love that. So yeah, this would be like my perfect deck aesthetically. If it, I mean, it is my perfect deck aesthetically. It's just the cardstock is not my favorite. I did pair it with the Witches Oracle, so I'll show you guys what that looks like. You guys know this is always a favorite, but it pairs really well because they both have like that black, but also there's like a witchy thing to it. So ooh, I love that. 8 of Cups with energy. The Tower with intention. The Hanged Man with enchantment. So I really like these two as a pair. And they're both like glossy, so you know that goes together as well. But the energy of them works really well together. So I've been really enjoying this deck, but what kind of stood out to me about the deck is the guidebook. So the guidebook gives you obviously like the astrological association. And what I've actually been doing with this is anytime I'm using a deck besides the Zodiac Tarot, like I've been using a lot of RWS this month, I bring this out and I read the description in here and apply it towards the card that I'm reading with so that I can get that astrological association, as well as the write-ups I really love in the Zodiac Tarot guidebook, and I love associating it with different decks as well. So I've been loving bringing out the guidebook for other decks, which has been really fun. Okay, so the other deck that I brought in this month, which was for a very specific purpose, like I was talking about, is the Signs of the Times Oracle. This is by Crystal Banner. When I first saw this, I was almost like repulsed by the fact that it was so modern. These are the backs. But that is why I ended up picking it up, because I have such this repulsion against like modern life and I feel like I don't belong here, but obviously I'm here for a reason. So I've been trying to reconcile my differences with our modern world, and I've been loving using this deck to do that because I don't have many modern decks, and if I do, they're like tarot decks that, you know, are diverse and all of that so that I can bring them into readings when I feel drawn to. But I don't have any really modern oracle decks. And this one, I love that it has things that we see on a day-to-day basis, like a traffic cone. I don't know. Normally that would be something I don't like because, I don't know, when I'm in my spirituality and like that magic and that mystical kind of place, I almost feel like it doesn't belong in this modern world. Like I feel like I'm meant to be in an older kind of time, you know. But I think I've been reconciling my differences with the modern world and realizing how lucky I am to be here and have, you know, my modern comforts and luxuries, and also able to help change the world in this modern time by bringing magic to the modern world, right? But I don't know, I really love this. I love the messages. They're very practical. I've used it in client readings and it works really well. But I don't know, I just love this. I pull it with like one oracle card. I pull it with like one tarot card and just read it like that. I have been pairing it with the Zodiac Tarot to kind of bring that mystical, magical kind of energy into the modern. So I've been pairing those together. But I don't know, it's been very spot on and accurate as I've been using it, and I really like this. I don't know, it's just really, really good, and I love the keywords. So I loved using it for that specific reason, but I also find it really good for like just readings in general and client readings and all of that. So those were the 2 decks that I brought in January. Okay, so let's talk about all of my like Christmas decks that I really was bonding with. I'm gonna go through these pretty fast because I made a whole video about 2 weeks ago or so, like gushing about these because I just couldn't put them down. The first one is the Anatomy of a Witch Oracle. This was a Christmas gift, and I was working with this every single night for a few weeks. I love this. The guidebook's really good. The messages were so spot on to anything I was going through. It just felt like medicine for my soul using this deck. And it is like the anatomy of a witch, so it felt very like physical to me. Like it brought like a very physical kind of message that I could embody physically, like in my everyday life around me, if that makes any sense. But I adore this deck, and it's been sitting on my desk and it hasn't left since I got it. I feel like this is gonna be like my main witchy deck. Again, if I'm wanting to really physically embody or physically bring certain energies into my life, this is very much that for me. I took a little break from it just because I was getting kind of the same messages over and over. So I've been trying to just focus on what it was trying to tell me, and you know, so I haven't been using it every day as much anymore, but I love it so much. And I still have a lot of work to do with it. So that is the Anatomy of a Witch Oracle. And an Oracle deck I've been pairing with it that I really love, and it has such synchronistic messages together. This is the Journey Oracle. Again, a Christmas gift. I love this deck. I've been using it for myself and for clients, and it is so beautiful, and I love the like poppy kind of artwork. Again, this feels kind of modern, but not too modern for me. And I love it. I love the keywords. I think they're really good. And I don't know, I love this little deck. I love that it has the white borders. It pairs a lot with a lot of decks that I like. I don't know, it just has really like practical messages, step by step, future self. I love that. Courage, gratitude, wholeness. I don't know, I just love it. I love the color palette. I think this will be so fun to use in the summer, especially because of the picnic table or picnic blanket backs. And if you have the Rainbow Heart Tarot, this looks so beautiful with it. Next up, this is the Madame Endura's Fortune cards, and these are my new favorite client cards. Like if you want predictive readings, or if that's your style, this deck is so good. I don't normally do super predictive readings, but I feel like when a client comes to you and they get a reading, and especially if they're asking about a certain situation, then these are really good for that. So again, these are very fortune tellery. I mean, they are called fortune cards, so they, you know, are kind of predictive, and I just love the messages. A barrier keeps you from your goal. Bright new prospects are on the horizon. Your surroundings will undergo transition. Let your intentions be known. Follow your intuition. So I love the artwork, but this has become a staple in client readings for me this month. I have used this deck for myself, but I just find it so scarily accurate for client readings, and it's a new staple. Like you can tell it's already kind of beat up. The cardstock's kind of like cardboardy, but I like it. I don't know. It has like an Art Nouveau kind of a style, and I'm obsessed with this deck. It's become like a staple use, you know, like I use it all the time kind of a deck. And it's one of those decks that it's like I wanted it, but I never picked it up for myself because I was like, you know, like it'll always be there. I'll get it eventually. And that's what kind of a lot of these decks were on my Christmas list. So this was a Christmas gift as well. and I'm just so happy I finally have them. So those are all of the Christmas decks I want to talk about. What do I want to talk about next? I guess I'll just kind of keep going into decks I used for like client readings and stuff that I really, really liked. I've talked about this deck before. This is the Prism Oracle, and I've had it for a few months now. And I bought it specifically for like emotional type work. These are the backs. Like, I just feel like this is a very useful deck, right? It has a lot. It's very like practical and useful. It has colors, and then it has like emotions or feelings or just situations. I don't know. It's so good. And I used it in a client reading the other day, and it blew my freaking mind. It's so accurate, and it has good and bad emotions. So that's when I find I like to use it the most, is like client readings or readings where I'm really trying to dig into emotions of the situation. And I don't know, this deck's so good, and I feel like it's kind of underrated. It's kind of simple in like the layout and the artwork, but it gets the freaking job done. And I find that sometimes it's not the prettiest decks that always work. It's the decks that are very practical that work the best for me. So I freaking love this deck. It's the Prism Oracle. And again, it has like a very specific kind of use for me. And that's just where I am right now with decks. Like, they have a certain purpose, and that's what I use them for. Prism Oracle. I also use this deck actually a lot for reading for myself and for clients. This is a Sacred Symbols Oracle. Again, this is one that's like simple in its illustrations and the artwork, but it's so useful. I don't know, I freaking love these messages. They're like magical and mystical and spiritual, but also down to earth, which is, you know, two different ends of the spectrum, but that's true. It's true. I don't know, I just freaking love this. And the artwork's very like rudimentary, you know, but it works. And again, it's just like, just because it's not the prettiest deck, I do think it's aesthetically pleasing, but even though it's not the prettiest deck, it's very useful. And that's just where I am. I want to use useful decks. Like, I know decks that really work, not decks that maybe are aesthetically beautiful to me. I just want them to freaking work. So that is the Sacred Symbols Oracle deck. Golden Art Nouveau. I use this quite a bit in client readings. I've been really drawn to only using like RWS decks. And this one, when I was wanting something a little different than just my RWS decks, this is what I was drawn to. I don't know why it's upside down, sorry. It's just beautiful. I love this deck. The cardstock's freaking awesome because it's Lo Scarabeo. It pairs really well with Sacred Symbols with the white border, as well as, you know, like the Journey Oracle. So I love this one. It's a classic. Yeah, towards the beginning of the month, the only things I wanted to pick up were RWS decks. This one has become my purse deck, so this is what I bring with me everywhere, and I do readings in the car for myself. I've also used this for client readings. The backs, gorgeous. I love the brown tones to this deck, and just this to me is like the perfect coloring of an RWS. Like, it's so aesthetically pleasing to me. I love it. Cardstock's linen-y, so it's really beautiful. So I've been using the crap out of that deck this month in my car, doing readings for myself, as well as using it for others. I just really wanted like a classic RWS to have with me. And then I've been using, this is probably the deck I used the most for myself for readings this month, which is the 1909 RWS. I love that you can see the wear and tear already. So this is just like the actual classic coloring. The cardstock on this is so yummy. Like, it just makes me want to use it more. The shuffle is beautiful. I don't know, it just lays flat on the table and it just looks beautiful in a reading. I love it. And I love that classic artwork. All during January, like the only tarot decks I really, really loved working with the most were just RWS decks like this. Mostly this one and the Neutral Vibes, and the Golden Art Nouveau is like a clone, but those were the ones I used the most. And this one was the one I used the most for me. I'm finding myself this month in February being drawn towards some other decks, which we'll talk about. And I'm so freaking excited about the deck that I found in my collection that I'm like obsessed with right now because I already had it. It's so funny. Anyway, we'll talk about that next month. But okay, so now let's talk about decks I was using for specific purposes. So ancestor decks. Again, this was a deck I had in my collection. This is the Wildwood Tarot, and I had it for so long and thought about getting rid of it so many times, and I trimmed it. But I felt drawn to use it for ancestor work, and so I shuffled the deck and I asked, do you want to be an ancestor deck for me? And the card that came out was the ancestor card. So I knew that this was going to be an ancestor deck for me. And this deck has made me freaking cry, you guys, with how beautiful it is. You know, when I decided I didn't want to work with it months and months ago, it was because I was, you know, freshly like feeling confident with tarot, and these associations don't line up with what my kind of associations with the tarot are. But I've gotten really into intuitive reading and just reading what I feel from the card, the imagery, and if there's a keyword, then what that brings up to me. And so that is very much what this deck does. I don't necessarily attach my tarot associations with this deck because it's very unique. And I love it for ancestor work. It is so beautiful. I feel like it connects me to like ancient ancestors, very pagan kind of ancestors, and that, which I feel such a draw to. So that is kind of the very specific ancestors that I feel like come through with this deck. And again, they're very like protective, and it's beautiful, and I don't know, it's just so healing. I love, love, love this deck now as an ancestor deck. I've kept it on my desk and it hasn't left, and I just keep it out like this with some crystals on it. And I have been so in love with that. And I don't know, I've been working with the guidebook, highlighting stuff in there that I feel like is a specific ancestor message. There's usually like, what I'll do is I'll pull a card, I'll get what I feel from it, and then I read the guidebook and I read the little entry for that card, and I usually find one specific message that really resonates with me, and I highlight that as like a really important message from that card from my ancestors. So that's how I've been working with that. The other deck I found to be an ancestor deck for me, which was kind of weird and unexpected, is the Oracle of the Witch. And I actually, one of the very first cards I pulled from it as an ancestor deck was the old ones, Honoring. And I have this over on my desk still because I feel like I need to work with this energy a little bit longer. And again, that card made me cry when I read the guidebook. Like, so beautiful. So this deck, I talked about how when I bring it out, the energy is very strong and I can't pull like multiple cards from it at a time. And I wasn't really sure like what this deck was meant for me, like what kind of work I was gonna do with it. And then when I thought, okay, well maybe I can use this as an ancestor deck, it fit that spot so beautifully. And this to me is like connected to my witchy ancestors and that feminine kind of power in my ancestors, which is so beautiful. But yeah, it connects me to that witchy energy, that those who came before me that walked the same path. It's just gorgeous. And even though like maybe I didn't have any witchy ancestors in my direct lineage, it connects me to like more of a universal kind of ancestral energy, kind of witchy energy, just those who walked the path before me, even if they weren't necessarily like my direct family. Like, we're all connected in that way. I don't know, I freaking love this deck for ancestor work. So I need to, there are a few decks on my wish list that I would love to work with for direct ancestry, or ancestry, you know, like in my direct lineage. And I have a few on my list. One of them is the Relative Tarot, and another one is the Oracle of the Roses by Rockpool. That one, I think it's Sherilyn Darcy is the creator, just because there's a lot of like rose kind of history on that side. So anyways, the last decks I used for very specific purposes excuse me, my throat is getting dry, was connecting with the divine feminine and connecting with that feminine power, because I was going through a lot of stuff last month regarding that. And I did make a whole video talking about, you know, divine feminine and religious trauma and all of that. And these decks have been helping me through that. So the first one is the Seasons of the Witch Beltane. This has become, I think, my favorite Seasons of the Witch deck lately. I've been working with the Seasons of the Witch Samhain every single week, but this one has been doing wonders like in my practice for me, and working with this deck has been so healing. It's connected to that divine feminine, but it's also connected to nature. And I don't know, like when I look at this deck, it's the deck that makes me want to go dance under the full moon naked. Like, that's the kind of energy it gives me. I am so happy with this deck, and I've done so much deep work. This deck, back in the summer, I did a lot of work with it surrounding self-love and accepting myself the way that I am, and I feel like it helped me on that journey. And because of that, I was able to lose a lot of weight, because I told myself I'm going to accept myself fully and love myself fully before I try to do any kind of weight loss. And this deck helped me with that, and then from there I was able to lose a lot of weight and become even happier with myself, you know what I mean? So just the energy of this deck and the readings I did with it were really powerful. So love this. And it's funny because it's like the middle of winter, and this is the one I'm drawn to use. But you know what? I'm not going to argue, because we've been doing some powerful work together. And then along with that, like the trauma, religious trauma, following like that divine feminine and honoring that part of myself has been the Sacred Cycles, which has helped me work with that feminine energy, my period, things like that. And I was working with this deck last year to help me heal that part of myself, but this year I felt a huge draw to try to work with this, and it's beautiful. It feels very, I've talked about it, it feels very primal, and like even the artwork feels kind of very old and just coming back to the way things used to be and honoring ourselves in that way. I don't know, it's just beautiful. And it doesn't just have things like about the female anatomy. It has like moon phases, plants, but I just freaking love this deck. For a very specific purpose, I've been using it, and it's been working wonderfully. So those were all the decks I worked with in January. I know it was a lot, but I was kind of trying to figure things out. And I feel like a lot of these will just become like a staple in my practice, or things I go to when I'm feeling like I need to work with that specific energy, which is great. And I just love like hunting in my collection for stuff that I already have, because I feel like this year is really about doing specific work around certain things, or certain things I'm trying to heal in my life, and not necessarily about trying to acquire new decks or whatever. Like I feel like I've really wanted to just do the work, right? And yeah, I'm excited. So those were my favorites and reflections for January. I'm sorry about how friggin' long this video was. If you made it here, comment down the creepy moon emoji down below, the like gray faced one. Okay, so I love you guys so much. If you would like a personal reading from me, I do offer them down in the description box in my Etsy. I hope you're all having a magical week, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.